Well, hello, Tronian friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Patio Ponderings. It's so good to see you today. Thanks for joining me. So, here we are back inside this week. We had a little bit of respite last week when I could be outside on the actual patio, but our weather situation's a little different, so here we are. So, what have I been pondering this week? So I've been really thinking about the passage that we read on Sunday morning from the prophet Isaiah. This is found in the Old Testament. And I'm particularly thinking of this verse from Isaiah 2, and it's the 4th verse. God will judge between the nations and settle disputes of the mighty nations. Then they will beat their swords into iron plows and their spears into pruning hooks. And nation will not take up sword against nation, and they will no longer learn how to make war. Now, this verse is part of a larger vision that God has for God's people. It's a vision that God desires for us, a vision of peace. It is a vision that God calls us toward. It's a vision that God promises for us, that this will happen one day. Now, there's a couple of things that we talked about on Sunday that I think are good to remind ourselves of again. So first, we remember that the Old Testament is written in the Hebrew language, and the Hebrew word for judge is mishpat, and mishpat means justice as well. So more than God's judgment as being a good versus bad, or good versus evil, right versus wrong, or guilty versus not guilty, this is about God bringing justice to the nations. This is about God calling us into right relationship with each other as human beings. And that's what justice is, right? It's about being in right relationship in which one is not subordinate to the other, one is not oppressed by the other, that we are in right relationship with each other. So it's very helpful to remember that. What I love about the verse, though, is the imagery. It is about transforming swords and spears, which are tools of war, instruments of death and destruction, and they're being transformed into iron plows and pruning hooks. Those are agricultural tools. Those are tools that are used to bring forth life from the earth, right? And beauty and things that bring us joy and nourishment. What an amazing image of the repurposing of these tools of death and killing, right? And so what we get then is not a picture of peace, in which peace just means the absence of violence or the absence of war, but it is a true peace in which we are living well with each other, a time when we're not even going to remember what war is. It's an amazing vision. So as I was dwelling in this passage last week, thinking about my sermon, it was really hard not to do so with current events hanging over my head, if you will. There were a lot of developments around war in the news last week, both ceasefire talks in the Middle East and peace talks around the war between Russia and Ukraine. And so here's the thing that I've been pondering. So as followers of Jesus, how do we use this vision that God creates for us of what God desires for us, what God calls for us, this vision of peace, this vision in which war is no more, as a lens through which to view current events? As we view these current events, how does this vision color or shape what we see? As we watch our global leaders negotiate their relationships and enter into diplomatic talks? Are we seeing our leaders call us forth into a vision that looks like what God has set out for us? Or are they doing something different? Is that even on their minds? What do you think? What do you see when you look at what's happening in the wars around the world? What lens are you viewing those things through? What's coloring or shaping and informing your view? And how does that jive with what God is calling us? As always, I would love to hear what you have to say. Have a great week. We'll see you Sunday. I'll see you on Sunday. Bye.